Welcome to Jerika. I'm Megan.
I'm Hanna.
And this is our guest.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Yep, I'm Jerika.
Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Jerika, do you want to tell people how we know each other, or do you want me to tell?
Yeah, so I know you through nannying your precious child.
I'm a precious child.
Yeah, it was for quite a few months, nearly a year. I feel like maybe like 8 or 9 months.
We started when he was
Like
3 or 4 months, and finished up in June. Yeah. So
That's crazy.
like 9 months.
Yeah.
The length of a pregnancy. She just dated my child.
Just gave birth to him.
Yeah. So Jerika was our nanny, and now we're moving into sending the little tiny human to daycare, which is scary, and we'll talk about that another time. But it means that I'm so happy to see Jerika because she hasn't been in our life for like a month or two.
Yeah.
It's been crazy.
Yeah. And he's grown so much since I last saw him.
Oh my gosh, I know. In the past like 2 weeks, he's done like everything. He started signing. He started like taking steps. Oh my gosh, he signs so much now.
So we're going to have
he does everything.
30-minute play date after this.
Yeah, absolutely. We will definitely be doing that. For sure. Yeah, so that's how we know each other. And we can certainly talk about some of that, but the main reason we have you here today is because Jerika is studying to be a midwife, which is super cool. And one of the things that I loved about her when we were picking a caregiver. So do you want to tell us a little bit about how
I got into the whole birth world?
Yeah, well, let's start with what kind of midwife are you studying to become? Because I know there's different designations.
Yes, and I was doing research before I got here because I'm like, do I really know what I'm doing?
That's okay. If you're wrong, it's totally fine.
We're
not experts. We don't expect you to be an expert. Yeah, exactly.
Sounds good. A little less pressure.
Yeah.
So I am studying to become a certified professional midwife, which takes about 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
And there's 2 routes you can go through. You can either do like the PEP phase or the PEP route, which is self-study. And you do the apprenticeship, and then you take the big NARM test, and then you're certified. Yes.
What does NARM stand for?
North American Registry of Midwives, I believe.
That sounds right.
Yes, it sounds like it'd be right,
Yeah.
so I hope so. And then the other route is the MEEK route, which I'm not going to take a guess on that one because that's not the one I'm going for.
Okay,
so
sounds
really
good.
know.
We don't need to know what it stands for. Somebody can tell us.
But with that route, you have to essentially go to school, to go to an accredited school, and still do the apprenticeship and then take the NARM test. Okay. So I feel like PEP is the way to go because it's about 25,000 less in tuition.
Wow, yeah.
So, yeah,
so
if I
it's
had to
the more cost-effective way for sure.
Yeah, so if I'm going to have to do the same requirements, I might as well not go in debt while doing it. So.
Good for you.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah, I
Great
feel like
plan.
It's smart.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So that's why you ended up going the PEP route.
Yes, and it's odd because, well, it's not odd, it's to be expected, but MEEK is becoming more accepted.
Sure.
Because it's something that people can like track and make sure that you know what you're doing.
Right, there is an accreditation process. Is there some sort of licensing for the midwives doing the apprenticeship, or can you just do it with anyone that is a CPM?
So you have to be a registered preceptor.
Okay.
Through NARM. So you have to either have so many years under your belt as a midwife, or you have to attend so many births. Okay. So, so I was very lucky. I didn't realize once I got into it, I was really, really blessed with falling into my preceptor's lap because I didn't realize like the gravity of the whole thing, and I didn't realize how hard it was to find a preceptor.
Really?
Yeah. So whenever I showed up, I'm like, hey, this is what I'm doing. And she was kind of like, okay, you can tag along. And then she kind of got stuck with me. She's like, all right, I guess you could stay. So, yeah.
That's really, really cool.
Yep. And so now that I'm in it and I hear how hard it is to find a preceptor, I'm like, oh, I was very fortunate because
That's awesome.
yeah,
That's
crazy.
really, really cool. Okay. And so what did bring you to midwifery? What interested you in it to begin with, and how'd you end up here?
Well, of course, I grew up thinking birth was the movie, like
Right.
the movies that you see, terrifying and traumatic.
As we all did.
Yes, and something that women had to be saved from.
Mm-hmm.
And I was on Facebook one day and I saw a home birth, and the woman was doing hypnobabies, like doing a hypnobirth, and it was a home birth, a water birth. And I was like, what the heck is all this? She's not screaming. She's not in a hospital. I don't understand what this is. So I looked into it, and then it was just like a spiral effect. And I was like, oh, there's this whole other side of birth that nobody ever told me about. And it's something that can be empowering and something that just is done because it's not some kind of like medical condition that has to be fixed. It's just is, which granted there are circumstances where you need help.
Mm-hmm.
But to be fair, like the majority is smooth sailing. So.
Yeah. So Hanna, you had wanted, why don't you jump in because you have a question about
I was
birth.
just going to say I loved everything that you just said. Like in my editing mind, I was like, all of this is the quote. That was beautiful. Yeah, so I don't have a question because I'm still mesmerized.
Well, you had mentioned before, Hanna, that you wanted to ask, like, when do you start attending births? Like, when do you start to get to see that happen?
Yeah, so
like, how does the apprenticeship work?
It differs, and I'm finding that out more as I get into it, that it differs from each preceptor. So, okay, so to answer this with another question, I guess. No, with another answer. So, the reason, whenever I went to the preceptor, she said, okay, we'll become a doula first. So that way, one, you see a birth before I get you in there, and you're like freaking out, which is not the energy you need for a birth.
Right.
And so you just get used to on-call lifestyle, because it's a lifestyle that I didn't realize was...
Didn't know what you were signing up for?
Yeah, I was like, I can do this. And I was like, oh, wait, hold on. So, yeah, I became a doula, and then COVID happened, and I couldn't get into any hospital to help people with their births. Mm-hmm. So I was like, hey, can I, let me know if I can help with any births or anything. I'm trying to finish this doula stuff. And she's like, oh, yeah, just come on back to, the clinic and we'll get started. So I feel like at first she took me on as trying to get me into a doula, and I just kind of like slid my way back into being a student. But yeah, that's...
Well, COVID disrupted a whole bunch of different things.
Yes.
So
yes,
understandable that it also impacted that process.
Yeah, so I feel like it was probably different this way. She always recommends people being done with phase 1, which is observing 10 births, before she takes them on as a student, which I did not. So that was another way that I was really blessed. So she took me on from ground zero and was like, all right, let's get it done. And yeah. So it just, to answer your question, I'm sure with other preceptors or even her in other situations, once you observe at least 10 births, then you can come on and help her with her births. But yeah.
So when you first started with her, had you observed any births?
No.
Okay,
no,
so having no birth experience.
That's what I'm saying. So I was very fortunate.
Were you just like in the room, in the corner watching, or were you like getting towels or water or hair ties or whatever?
That one. So I was pretty much doing like the doula things without being her doula, because I mean I personally don't want somebody lurking in the corner that I don't really
that'd be
know.
Weird and creepy.
Right.
Yeah, I feel like that would just disrupt the whole process and kind of be traumatic. So, yes, she made sure to keep me busy and be like, oh, well, go grab the towels, go grab the blankets, go grab her some snacks and stuff like that. So I made sure to kind of like be a step ahead and be like, okay, well, I think she'll need this, so I'll just grab her this, instead of just being like, this will be my first birth, and just staring really awkwardly. But she liked to make sure that you meet the person before you get to their birth, which is understandable.
greatly appreciated from a birthing
sure.
person perspective.
Yeah.
Who the heck are you? And I'm naked. So what are you doing here?
Yep. So I definitely agree with that one for sure. But yeah, she took me in without any experience, which of course I got like my Wikipedia bachelor's or something. Just like I studied a lot before.
Oh, you
I
got your
to
Wikipedia bachelor. I've never heard that phrase. I was
just
like,
made it up.
what is she saying?
Made it up on the spot. But yeah, I watched a whole lot of birth videos and tried to understand like what to expect and stuff like that. So yeah.
Cool.
I think I answered the question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So when you come in...
Hold on.
Oh, go for it.
You just said you... Sorry. You just said you watched a lot of videos before you went into your first birth that you, let's say, doulaed for. How is that? Like from going, okay, I feel like, or I mean, I don't know what you felt like, but like watching all these videos and then being there in the room watching for the first time the real deal.
Yeah, so it was I feel like there were a couple of labors that I attended before I actually got to observe my first birth, because COVID has made things very wonky. So there were quite a bit of transfers. So even for like things you'd never see, it's like, oh, well, COVID happened, so why not? And
meaning that people didn't want to go to the hospital to give birth.
Right.
Because of COVID.
Right.
So people that normally would not have opted for a midwife were coming to give birth with a midwife.
Yes, but
weren't really ready for what that actually meant.
Yeah, which I feel like an out of hospital experience is even in hospital, just a natural birth is definitely like a mindset and a lot of education and prepping.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
I hear a lot of people be like, oh, well, the body knows what it's supposed to do. Yes. You just have to get your mind on board with that, because if not, then it's going to be a lot harder than you think.
Yeah, because your body's going to do stuff without you knowing what it is.
Yep.
And if you learn about it, like you said, if you educate yourself or get yourself educated and know what that means, know what that is doing, then it's not scary. But if it's scary, then you're going to totally disrupt.
Yep. And
if you're scared,
and more painful.
Right, exactly. It's going to get harder and it's going to get more painful, and it may even stop.
Yeah.
And that's your body reacting to your fear and protecting you. But it makes it really difficult for birth to continue. Yeah.
It's counterproductive.
Yeah.
But
so you had a lot of people that
opted for out of hospital birth, and once it came time, they were like, oh. Like, yeah. It's happening.
This is a lot.
Yes.
Welcome.
Yeah. And that aspect of it made it to where transfers increased, as well as just things that I've been told from other midwives, things that they just haven't seen regularly, like decels for no reason.
What's a decel?
So whenever baby's heart rate drops.
Oh, the deceleration.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or like 2 weeks ago, I think, we had a mom who had a C-section like 9 years ago. So her chances of uterine rupture are like 0.5%. Her uterus ruptured. Yeah.
Wow.
My midwife has never seen anything like that, and she's like, the chances are like nothing.
Oh, that's so scary.
Yeah. So just weird things.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of boys this year, and usually boys give you trouble once they come earthside and just want to make sure, like they're chilling. So you have to give them a little breath with the bag and mask for no reason, just because they're chilling.
Okay.
But apparently that's a COVID thing too, because why not? So
weird. So there's been a lot of different disruption and not normal disruption.
Yeah. And it's
That's
weird because
so
I haven't been there since before COVID. So I'm like, oh no, this is normal, I think. And they're like, no, this is weird. Like COVID is just odd.
It's in our bodies. I mean, not the disease necessarily.
I feel like the stress and everything
stress
is
of
affected
it, yeah.
too. Yeah.
The stress of it. I've definitely been noticing. Yeah. It's a lot. No, it's not surprising that it affects birth, but I hadn't really thought about that.
Yeah. We have some beautiful births too.
Sure.
But I do think that just the idea of COVID has made things different in that way. But I'm trying to remember what your question was, because I just segued off into...
I liked it. It's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. You did eventually see a birth, though.
Yes.
Yeah.
I started in either late October or early November, and my first birth was like January 4th, I think. So,
Wow,
yes, that
okay.
was the question
So it was
of
a
what do
long
I do
time.
for, yes. So I guess I had a little bit of practice to...
Right, before somebody...
Yeah. So, yeah.
Before you got to see a baby, though. That's so
Yes.
sad. You had to do the, like, intense part without the adorable little alien
reward.
coming out.
Yes, that's one of the hard things. Like, we had a 16-hour-long labor earlier this year, and it just ended up being a transfer.
Yeah.
Like, dang it, because, I mean, 16
You spend
hours
a lot of
is-
time with someone, yeah.
And I was rooting for it, too, but it's
Yeah.
just one of those things.
So what, can I ask, what things do you transfer for?
So we transfer if there's meconium, so if baby poops, because that
Okay.
tends to be baby stressed out for some reason.
So after the birth, if the baby...
during
during even.
labor.
Okay.
So if water breaks and water is not clear, I mean, it depends on what shade of green
Okay.
the poo is, because if it looks a little bit older, then it just means probably baby is just more mature and their digestive system is starting to kick in, which is good. But if baby is stressed, then it'll, like, if baby is head's being compressed, and baby's about to be born, that's normal, because that's a tight fit. But if baby is up high and cord's being clamped or something pressed, then that means baby needs help.
So, this is unrelated.
Yes.
But I have a
I
question
knew you were
for
going to ask that. It was in my head.
Oh my goodness.
Why in the birthing world do we call the baby baby and not use the? Do you know?
Baby. Probably to make it like more personal instead of it being like an object.
Probably.
I don't know. I haven't been asked that question.
I think that's what I assumed.
I feel like that, but then I do say, well, the baby was fine. So
Right, of course. But there's so, like, you just said it like 18 times in that sentence, which is why it made me think of it. But like, if baby is stressed, or if baby is blah blah blah, or if baby is the other thing, or when baby comes, or something like that, and I'm always like, okay, but why are we not using an article?
the
The
baby.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, I could see it making it more like more personal, because I go back and forth, but I never really thought of that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then people don't talk about it, and it's just a thing that happens.
It should be brought up. It should be a conversation.
We'll ask around and report back.
My midwife would be like, "What?
Why do we call them baby?" I mean, yeah, I totally understand making it more. See, I call it.
Yep.
Making the baby more of a person, in our conception of them.
I mean,
in our
once I
thinking
know
about
baby's
them.
name, then I'm like, oh, baby Joseph. That's a weird name.
That's a very normal name.
That is a very normal name. I'm trying to think of a name that's similar to the ones we've had without saying one of the ones we had.
Sure.
But yeah, once I know baby's name, then I feel like I say baby's name more. But something that, okay, so one of your podcasts, total segue, but one of your podcasts, you're talking about how when you're a mother, you want to be called by your name instead of mama, because that's your name. And I know that, and for some reason in my mind, I'll say the person's name all the way up until they're in labor, and then they're mama.
That's okay.
Yeah, I just feel like that maybe the reason I do it is because I'm like, all right, this is a reminder of why you're doing it, because you're a mama, and baby, I don't know, but yeah, instead of calling them by their name, it's always mama.
I could see that. And honestly, for me personally, I don't think that would have been a problem for me because I wasn't really paying attention to the people around me anyway.
That's fair.
So,
yep. Once you get to that point, you're like, call me whatever, just get this thing out.
Yeah. I don't know, though. It might have been really powerful to hear my name. Mm-hmm. It might have brought me, a little more into the room.
Yeah, more grounding.
Yeah. Which could go both ways, right? It could be good. It could be not as helpful. So...
I keep saying I think I answered that question because I always forget what the question was once I get to the end of my spiel.
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
The question is literally just to start you on a spiel. So wherever it ends up is a good place.
It's a good question. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Making me feel great about the questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I was also trying to remember we were somewhere before we took a turn. And that was interesting. I wanted to continue there. But I also don't remember what that was. What you were talking about. When you said, oh, I know, okay. Pick me.
Hanna, share with the class.
The question was, what do you transfer for?
Yes.
Yeah,
so,
that's right.
Obviously.
So deceleration of heart rate, meconium.
Even if baby's heart rate excels, like just something wonky that's not within like the normal pattern for contractions, those are more like emergent. Mm-hmm. And obviously if bleeding picks up out of nowhere, I mean, sometimes it could be just cervix is dilating super fast, so that's why it bursts like the blood vessels. Trying to think. We have for more emergent, I guess once baby's born, if baby just isn't coming around as well as it should, yeah.
I think you mentioned one time that you had a placental abruption. Is that true?
Yes. So, well, we had one. Baby was already born, and I'm not going to name any names because HIPAA, but so baby was born in call. Pretty cool.
That's very cool.
Yeah. And the thing with that...
Do you want to explain what that means?
Yeah. So baby was born in the amniotic sac, which is more rare because in hospitals, providers usually break the water to get things speed up. But with that being in call, baby, usually when they're born vaginally, it's a slow descent once the head's born. So like their chest is being compressed. So all the extra fluids in their lungs is usually like spouted out of the nose and the mouth, which is helpful.
Yeah.
When they're in call, it does make it a little bit harder because they're in the water. So once baby was born, we, took the sac off, and baby had a little bit hard time coming around because it still had a lot of fluid in his lungs. So we called 911, which we had it under control, but just in case, it's better to have backup. And then by the time they got there, baby was fine. Baby was starting to pink up. Baby was crying. So the ambulance, like, they were just like looking at each other, like, do you know why we were called here? Like, everything, like, she just
everything good?
Yeah, everything is fine. They're just standing there awkwardly and like looking at each other, and I'm like, okay. And then it was really good that they were there because placenta wouldn't come, and she started bleeding a little bit more, and we gave her like tinctures and stuff because CPMs can't carry medicine in Virginia. So we have like traditional Chinese medicine and tinctures and herbs. So we gave her some of those, and placenta wasn't coming, and she was still bleeding a little bit. So they transferred her. She had had a C-section before, and my theory is that the placenta was attached to the scar, to the incision, because it wasn't coming out. Like, they tried to manually remove it at the hospital without medication, and then with medication, and then, and then they had to do a DNC, and, so, it wasn't an abruption, but it just wasn't coming out. They had to put her under and physically, like, remove it. So that was an interesting case that never seen before. So
definitely,
which you wouldn't know that until after baby's born. So I guess hemorrhage would be another one, which could be after baby's born or while baby's still chilling in the uterus.
And how often does this happen in the practice that you're at? So out of like 10 births, how many transfer would you say at this? Considering COVID is affecting it.
Well, before COVID, it was like 12% transfer rate, which is
so that's like a little over 1 in 10.
Yeah.
Is exhaustion in the mix in there too, or just the ones that you listed? Yeah,
well, those ones were like more emergent, so like ambulance, or we just got to get her in the car and go soon. Okay. But
like exhaustion and pain management are both reasons that people choose to transfer, right?
Yes, we've had those. I feel like with COVID, that is one of the main things, because people come over and they're not entirely sure. They're like, oh, I can do it. Like, I believe in you. But also, it's kind of hard. But yeah, for exhaustion and pain management, those are non-emergent things, but we do see those too. I can't really give a number on how many we see transfer, because it's, I don't want to say like inconsistent, but it's just fine. Every now and then you're like, why are we seeing this? Ugh, a transfer. Okay. Yeah.
That's a bummer.
Yeah, but I mean,
you sound real annoyed about that.
Yeah, which I think is selfish of me, and something that I've thought about lately is, like, we all think we're the main character in our lives. We're philosophical right now. Because whenever I show up to the birth, I had to be like, this is not my big day. Like, this is not about me. Like, I want this, obviously, I want this person to do so well, and I want everything to go as they plan. And it's okay for me to be a little disappointed when I've been there for hours since the transfer.
Sure.
But at the same time, like, I'm not the main character in the story, so I just need to.
That is such a valuable experience to have.
Yeah. So that's definitely something that I've been thinking about a lot lately.
Wow.
But yeah, that's philosophical, and
it's a big human moment.
Yeah. Take it in.
Yeah.
But yeah, even when
definitely put into sorry.
Oh no, you're good. I was just saying that even as like I'm learning different skills, in my mind I'm like, okay, don't mess this up. Everybody's gonna notice. Half the people are gonna notice because they're not worried about you. Like, you can trip over this and no one's gonna care, because like, you're not the star of the show here. They're not looking at you. Like, yeah, just stuff like that.
It's put into pretty stark relief when you're in the room with someone giving birth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes. If they're recording, then it's a different story.
Then you feel like you're the star of the show.
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, once it's like documented, you're like, dang, and that's their birth story. Like, they're gonna keep showing people this, and you're just in the background fumbling with something. And they're gonna be like, who is that? Who let her in here? Like, she doesn't even know how to open something. So
I still think they probably won't notice, but it's fair that that's a little more.
Like, so they're in transition. Obviously, there's like this moment where you're like, I just can't do it, and you just start to escalate. My preceptor is very good at like snapping you back into reality. And I mean, when there's a group of people, there's often times where people just like chime in and like they do too much, essentially. They just start escalating the situation, and they start getting louder and louder, and then mom just starts like freaking out.
So these are people that
Family
are
members.
Like guests in the birth? Okay.
Yes, we've seen some interesting guests, by the way. Like, little brother's girlfriend, she was sitting on his lap, kissing him while she's like, and I'm like, what? Why are you here? This is not a show.
Why are you here?
I don't understand. But my preceptor is really good at like snapping her back into reality, being like, hey, and everybody's like, breathe, just breathe, you got this. And then she'll just reconnect, and then bloop, a baby. So wow. But the thing is with really that, cool. Most of the times when she needs to do that, somebody's recording, so whenever they look back at their video, they're going to hear a midwife being like, hey, and everybody's like, why is she yelling? But it helps.
Yeah.
It's what's needed.
She's yelling because she's doing what's needed at that moment.
Yeah. So that's her thing. She's like, I swear to you, there's like so many videos out there of me sounding like a super mean provider.
Yeah.
But I mean, it worked. So.
Yeah, when you're in a panic escalation, something loud is sometimes good to sort of
a surprise
cut that
moment,
off.
right?
A what?
A surprise moment.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. To take you out of the spiral that you're in.
Yeah. And we've seen people get very excited and like hands just reach in once baby is born and try to like pull. I'm like, no, she's still attached to the umbilical cord, which is still in her. So back up. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's your role now? You've been in this program for, about the same amount of time you've been caring for my baby.
That is crazy.
Like somewhere around 6 to 9 months, right?
Yeah. It's been...
Oh, it's been longer than that.
Yeah. It's been, what,
10 months?
What month is it now? 8? Yeah,
it is
August.
8, yeah.
So, like, oh my gosh. 10 or 11?
Yeah.
10?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and I started even being interested in birth in January of 2020. So it's...
Yeah, you have made a big life change over the
Yeah.
past 2 years.
Yeah, it's different careers, and I'm so glad I left Panda Express when I did. Wouldn't recommend it on my worst enemy. So,
Wow.
yeah, and it just kind of took off since then, because like 2 weeks later, I signed up for care.com.
Mm-hmm.
Or I signed up for care.com a couple days later, and 2 weeks later, I found you guys. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. And time has flown.
Yep.
But I think the question was...
So what's
not
your role
emergent.
now at birth?
Oh,
You're
yes.
no
I
longer
was
fetching
off-
hair ties and towels.
Yes.
Although I'm sure
Which
you
I
do
s-
some of that.
Yeah, I still do that. I've caught 2 babies so far, which is very
fun.
much, yes, a privilege that I realize not a lot of people do
Yeah.
when they're just starting. So I've been to 12 births so far, which seems like a small number, but considering like the transfers, and then it's out of hospital practice, so in a hospital you could probably see like 12 births in one night.
Right.
But it's a little bit different whenever it's...
Yeah, how many like due dates does your practice take on in a given month?
Usually like 4
Okay.
a month, but with due dates, the beautiful thing is some can happen all at once,
Right.
and
Of
some
course.
can just take forever. So I think
Yeah.
last month we had like 9 people go into labor.
Wow.
Yeah, so
That's a lot.
it is a lot.
Ooh.
Yeah. So
And what's your on-call schedule like? So how often are you on call and how often are you off?
depends on who's due.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have, which I
So
think
do you go with a patient?
if they transfer.
No, do you like are you like assigned to certain patients?
Mm-mm.
No. Okay.
So I think whenever I first started, it was an option to be like, oh, on these days I'll be on call and on these days I won't.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of being like, that is a good idea, so I can just merge into on-call life, I'm like, no, I want it all. And I was on call like 24/7.
Cool.
I probably should have just gradually eased into it, but
You know?
what? It made me who I am today. So
2020 hindsight.
yeah. But yeah, if anybody is due, then we're just on, like, we're on call. So
Okay.
we don't have anybody due for another like week, maybe week and a half.
Mhm.
So I'm off call.
Okay.
And it's not a very sustainable way to do a practice,
Mm-hmm.
but I have plans to, whenever I'm eventually a midwife, I want to be in a collective, which my preceptor is in a collective. It's just a different type of system.
Mm-hmm.
They're wanting to eventually do it to where you can have scheduled time off call
Awesome.
instead of waiting for somebody to finally
Yeah.
give birth, so you can have off
Mhm.
call time. So yeah, I go, I think months straight of being on call, and then like have a little chunk of off call time, but you can never really plan when it's gonna happen. Okay. So, yeah.
Wow. Cool.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a very intense schedule.
That is, and I feel like I'm not witty, or I'm not very smart about how I do it.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what the word is. Clever. I don't know what the word is. But, so I do still miss out on a lot of things, because I'm like, what if there's a birth? But what if there's a birth? I can't go to that, because what if there's a birth? There's not going to be a birth. There might be. Chances are there's not. Right. So then I just miss out on these opportunities where I could have went. But, yeah.
I think that's just, you're still figuring it out. You're still new to this. You got to figure out the balance of it as you go along.
And I'm
sure you will.
Better at it. But yeah, it's definitely something that you have to figure out, because then you have to work out, well, if you go, who's driving? Do you have your birth bag? How far away are you going to be?
Right. That's a lot
Where's
to think
the birth at? And then if you got to go, are you both going back? Are they staying? Is someone going to be able to take them home? Do you have to go home first and then? So, yeah. Usually people drive 2 separate cars, so I'm like, I don't really want to do that. So
it's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned eventually you want to be in a collective. How long is this program, or your apprenticeship?
It's usually
potentially
about 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
I feel like since it's got a lot more clients, it'll be closer to 3.
Okay. That's exciting.
Yeah. So
do you get paid for your apprenticeship?
No. That's the hard part about it.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're not paying for school.
Right. I'm not paying for school, but I am getting an education for free.
But you're also doing a lot of work and not being paid.
Yes. And I have to also do more work to get paid.
Sure, of course.
Which can lead to burnout quite often. But, I mean, you just gotta do what you gotta do. But some preceptors I've heard of pay their students, regardless of, like, their phase, if they do, like, paperwork and stuff like that. Technically, I don't think you're supposed to. But my preceptor has found ways to make sure, like, I'm not struggling. So lately I've started doing some billing. I'm not very good at it yet. So every now and then she'll just, like, throw some money. But I'll get about 15% of what she makes if I do it, and I do it well.
Okay.
Once you get to phase 3, though, you do get paid $400 a birth for an assistant fee, which is good. It's not a required thing that she has to do. She just does it because you have to survive somehow. So yes, you get paid, but not.
But it's not like having a job.
Right. So it's different things, and I do placenta encapsulation as well. So she makes sure to be like, oh, hey, are you interested in this? To her clients. I'm like, oh, I don't know. And she's like, well, she's your girl. You talk to her and you'll get it figured out. So
that's really great.
She throws bones. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's really neat. So at the end of this, are you planning to work in this area, or are you planning to, is there, like, I don't know, are midwives territorial?
I feel like down here, maybe. Yeah, there's a lot of drama. And
really?
There's a lot. Okay, here's the pinnacle of the drama.
Oh my gosh, midwife drama. Okay.
And this is a recent thing that's happened.
So exciting.
But it's kind of a big deal. So, the president of the Midwives Alliance for Virginia, she's a doctor. She makes sure that everyone knows she's a doctor. Sarita Bennett, calling her out. She's supposed to be, like, an advocate. She's the president of it, so she's supposed to advocate for midwives being autonomous, certified professional midwives being autonomous, and that they should be legal, right? Well, no, she doesn't want to do that. So she's turned into being the advocate to, well, I'm a doctor. The only reason I call myself a midwife is because she wants to do birth, but she's a CPM only because legally to advertise as a midwife, she has to be. But she wants to make it to where the only way certified professional midwives can be legal is if they're required to be under a physician. So, yeah. So I'm like, how are you supposed to be like the person to protect us and you want to throw us under a bus?
Well, and physicians have such a hard time having a profitable practice if they're not attached to a hospital. So then CPMs would be under hospitals.
Well, it'd still be out of hospital. The thing that they're trying to say is that we'll finally get to have medication, but we can't get that medication without the approval and instruction of a physician. So, and there's already, like, I agree, it would be beautiful if physicians and midwives could work together and have this collaborative care. I agree. But to make it required, knowing that there's like this...
Knowing that the infrastructure is flawed.
Yes, and a lot of physicians don't like CPMs because we're...
quote-unquote alternative care.
Yeah, that's not very safe and...
She said with air quotes.
Yeah, sorry, safe. Isn't very safe and isn't optimal because it's dangerous.
Interesting.
Yeah, so...
All right, so there's Virginia Midwife Drama. So if that becomes law, then you may end up going to a different state, or you may end up looking for a co-op that's affiliated with a doctor.
I don't really know yet.
Sure,
because
that's fair.
Before Virginia even legalized CPMs, my preceptor was like one of the original ones. She was underground because it wasn't legal. So
yeah, what are there certain types of midwives that are not legal in Virginia?
So,
or is that something you don't know? It's okay if you don't know.
I do, but don't. I don't know the logistics. That like I don't know the. So a CPM, yes. Certified midwife, yes. Certified nurse midwife, yes. Which all the tea started because certified nurse midwives wanted to be autonomous without the overseeing of a physician.
Sure, yeah.
Which makes sense. Like, they went to school for at least 8 years and can do the medicine and all this stuff. But even they were hesitant. They're like, why should you be able to do that without a physician? That wouldn't be safe. So if they're getting backlash already, which that one finally went through, but if they had that much backlash, then certified professional midwives who don't have that
have
medical background,
fewer requirements.
Yeah.
And
well, not no medical background, but like the accredited medical background, then they're like, how would we even get through if they almost didn't? So
yeah, interesting.
Yeah, but lay midwives, pretty sure are legal.
They are.
I'm pretty sure
Okay.
My preceptor has.
Is there any kind of midwife that is not?
I feel like Virginia's
permissible by law.
Decent at it. North Carolina certified professional midwives, no.
Okay.
Nope.
So it varies state to state.
Yes.
Also.
I think like 34 states allow CPMs.
Okay.
And
wow.
Depending on what state you're in, like California, you can do medicine, you can do all the things. But Virginia, you can't do any medicine. So.
Right. Yeah, I think the practice that I went to is not the one that you're working at, but it is, they're affiliated with a CNM, a certified nurse midwife, or a nurse midwife, anyway.
Yeah.
And she prescribes things like, so I did have Pitocin after I gave birth to facilitate my placenta releasing and coming out. And they were able to administer that to me because the certified nurse midwife had prescribed it. So that was one way that they got around that. They were affiliated with a nurse midwife.
Yeah. Which, like I said, I think is very handy. It's just to require it makes it a very gray area that is hard.
I mean, definitely. you got to find the balance between regulating things for people to stay safe, but then also creating space and opportunity for people to make decisions about their own care. And that balance, I think, is really hard to strike.
It's very hard.
As anybody.
Yeah.
But especially in a legislature that's overwhelmingly male and overwhelmingly not birth professionals.
And it's a lot of gatekeeping too, because like I said, meek is usually the way that's mostly preferred right now. And that's like $20,000-$25,000.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that money, and if you can't support yourself during your apprenticeship, then you just can't do it. So it's a lot of people who are very well off and who have those privileges. So
yeah, it's also gatekeeping on the other end too, because midwives are separated out from the quote unquote medical system. The vast majority of insurances don't cover
that is hard too.
Midwife care. And so midwives have to obviously charge for their care because otherwise they can't work. And so it's people that have the income or have the available funds to pay for an out-of-hospital birth that have the opportunity to have those births. So it's gatekeeping on all the fronts, really.
Yeah. And fortunately, Virginia does do Medicaid. So I think a majority of our clients do Medicaid.
Really?
Yeah. So that makes it a lot more attainable for some people.
That's really cool. That's surprising to me.
Yeah. And it's instead of the 4,000, it'll be the 1,000, and the Medicaid will do the rest.
Okay.
So, yeah.
That's neat. So Medicaid does cover
some
midwife care, some of it.
Yeah, some midwives. But yeah, I have this one lady who talked to me yesterday about her insurance. Her deductible for an out-of-hospital provider, guess how much?
$6,000.
10.
Wow.
I'm like,
yep.
So you don't have insurance is what you're telling me? Like, it's just not gonna...
Well, yeah.
It's crazy.
If you don't want to, if you don't have, insurance as a whole.
Yeah, another
can of worms.
Yep.
But if you don't have good healthcare through your provider, and you are relatively young and relatively healthy, which someone giving birth and wanting to give birth with a midwife practice usually is, then, what I did when I was in that position was I got catastrophe insurance. So they didn't start paying anything until I had paid $6,000. And so, and that way it wasn't $300 a month for me to pay for insurance.
Yeah.
And that was what I needed at the time. So I definitely know that that's out there.
Yeah.
But if I had needed to give birth at that point, it would have been very expensive.
Yeah. The business of birth is very, very crazy.
It's very
inexpensive.
Interesting. So when you finish, you are interested in becoming part of a co-op. Can you tell us what that is?
Yes. So I want to be a part of a collective.
Oh, a collective. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry. I want to be a part of a collective, and it'll differ from collective to collective to see how it'll work. But the ideal schedule will be like a week on call, maybe a week off call, or certain days where I'll be off call. So that way, because you need family life balance, like work life.
Amen, hallelujah, sister.
Yeah. So, yeah, I want to be able to be like, okay, well, on this day, we can go do this and this and this with my kids, instead of being like, oh, let's go. Oh, there's a birth. Gotta go. Sorry, maybe we'll do it tomorrow if there's not a birth.
Right.
So,
if
and that's
there's
always,
not a birth.
Having predictability.
That's a phrase in the birth world. If there's not a birth, that's...
It's like the inshallah.
Yeah. Like, oh, I'd love to go to this.
If there's not a birth.
Yeah. So, yeah. There's usually not, but I'm at the point where I'm like, but if there is, I don't know.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's that balance.
Okay.
But, yeah, and to segue again, so sorry. I just recently joined a doula collective. So,
oh, great.
Yeah, they have an interesting model to where you can put certain days where you can be off call, And then there's like a lineup of the doulas, which the clients will meet all the doulas. So you're not like, oh, hey, nice to meet you while you're pushing a baby. So with theirs, you had like the list of people who are on call. If this person can't make it, it'll be the next person. If they can't make it, or if they're at another birth, it'll be the next person. So that way is more sustainable. And that's kind of an idea of how I want to go about it. Because being solo is hard. Like you're the person.
Yeah.
So
everything is dependent on you.
Yep.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Neat. Oh, and that's another way that you earn income while you're studying.
Yeah.
Is through being a doula.
Yeah, I'm just now becoming like more okay with doing doula work. Because in the back of my head it's always, well, what if I'm at a birth as a doula and somebody at the clinic is giving birth? Like, what do I do then? Which my midwife is already like, you're fine. Like, obviously you go with the one that you're a doula for. But I'm like, but the person at the clinic, I can't not be there. So I'm just now becoming okay with finding clients. I've had, I think, 1 or 2 like official doula clients to where I'm like, okay, paperwork and stuff. The other births that I've done as a doula, I helped one with a transfer whenever COVID finally let up a little bit and they could let more people in.
So you went with them to the hospital?
Yeah, I went with them. And then I did one that I signed with. It was a day that I was here all day. And then I got home, like, I'm so tired, I'm gonna take a nap. Get in the shower. As soon as I get out, I get a text, hey, mind you, the lady lives an hour and a half away in Franklin.
Oh my goodness.
So I told her, like, as soon as you even think you're in labor, like, if you even feel something and it's just gas, let me know and we'll get ready. She texted me, she's like, hey, just want to let you know I've been in labor for like 17 hours and contractions are every 2 to 4 minutes. And I was like, what?
Okay.
Did you tell the midwife? Yeah, but she said she's not worried about it. So I get a hold of the midwife and I'm like, hey, like, she says it's every 2 to 4 minutes. She said, that's not what she told me. You know what? I'll just go there just in case. I'll wait in a parking lot across the road if I need to. The midwife missed the birth by 2 minutes.
Oh my God.
And I missed the birth like 20 minutes, maybe 30. So I'm like, this is why I said, even if it's just a twinge, like a side stitch, something, anything, let me know. And I felt so bad the whole time because I'm like, she paid for my services. And granted, like, I helped her prenatally and told her about her options, but I wasn't there for her birth.
Yeah.
And then I was like, but wait, the only reason why the midwife was there that soon is because you got a hold of her.
Yeah.
So,
bam.
Like, you're
worth the price of admission.
Yeah. And
for sure.
I helped her postpartum too. So I'm like, you did what you're supposed to do. You did all that you could do. And then another doula client was a week or 2 ago, and this was a circumstance where I just met the person because another midwife that I am wanting to start work with, she had a transfer. Mom had been in labor for like 24 hours already. Baby wasn't coming. She wasn't dilating. She sent her to the hospital. The staff was like beautiful. Like, I've never
that's
seen.
so wonderful.
Yeah, like, because she had a traumatic C-section before with twins where they didn't ask her anything. Like, okay, we're doing this and this and this, and then
Whew, that's overwhelming.
Yeah, so she was just sitting there like, what the heck? And it was very traumatic for her. So the nurses came in and the doctor came in and the doctor sat down. She's like, you want to tell me, you know, your experiences, what happened with the last one, what you're hoping to see with this one, how we can make that better.
Yeah.
And I was like, you always hear about the stereotypical, like, no, you can't do that because I said you can't.
Yeah, which I think is also a movie version of doctors.
Yeah.
Right? I think there's a lot of truth to it in certain circumstances, but, you know, if we're going to say that every birth is different, every mom is different, we also have to say that every doctor is different.
That's fair. Yeah. So, like I said, beautiful staff. She actually was crying. She's like, you care? And I was like, okay, I like this. That writing down like their names.
Yeah.
Like that. And then there was a shift change as soon as all that happened.
No.
And I was like, okay, I'm nervous. I'm a little nervous. Hopefully everything stays good. And the new nurse came in and I was like, you're trying. You're trying. I'm not going to be biased. You're trying. She kept saying like weird stuff. And I'm like, okay, we'll let that one slide. Because like, obviously it didn't affect the mom. And then the new doctor came in and she's like, oh, or he said, yeah, she told me this and this and that. So we'll make sure everything goes good. He's a good doctor in the sense that he's to the point and lets you know like how it's supposed to be done. It's just
it didn't have the same vibe.
The personality difference was different. So instead of being like sweet and sincere and empathetic, he was more like joking and quirky. And I'm like, this is not the time. Like, not good timing. Yeah. And he made a comment about, well, obviously it's just not working. Like, your body's just not doing it. And I was like, that's not what you want to tell a mom who's had a C-section. About that. Yeah. And she's already worried about another C-section. Yeah. And like as soon as he said, I like looked at her and
that gave me all the feelings.
Yeah. And he said it as like well, obviously something's not working. And I'm like, that's not funny. I didn't think that was funny. But he was to the point. Everything that he said was true, but it was just the way
the delivery.
Yeah. And so eventually it was just to the point where she had to have a C-section, and at first like her emotions were up here, then she slowly started like digest and understand. I'm like, okay, well listen, you know, if you want to have a C-section, here are your options. Like here's gentle C-section options. You don't have to just go in there and then they do whatever they want to you, like what happened last time. You know, you could have a clear drape up if you'd like. You can have them narrate what's happening as baby's being born. I've even heard of circumstances where instead of just pulling baby out, it's a slow pull, so it'll kind of simulate the same squeeze.
Compression,
yeah, to get the fluids out. I've even heard of people who have been sterilized and gloved up so they could pull baby themselves.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I've heard of situations like that, and whenever the doctor came in, we asked about gentle C-section options, and he's like, well, what does that mean? I was like, you know, you're good.
Yeah, that's not surprising.
Yeah, so she found a lot of comfort in me. So whenever he asked that,
which is why we love doulas.
Yeah.
Doulas are great.
Yes. Whenever he said that, she looked at me like,
right.
You tell him. And I was like, okay, well, like, you know, the clear drape so she can see what's going on. I mean, we have those, but it'll take like an extra 5 minutes to find which one's which. And I was like,
excuse me, sir?
Yeah, I was like, 5, only 5? Like 1, 2.
You said 5, right? Not 55?
Yeah, I think I'm confused. Even if it is 55, she's the one, you know, it's a big day for her. It's a birth.
Yeah, if things are emergent, 55 minutes could be a preventative amount of time.
It wasn't emergent.
If it's emergent 5 minutes even, would probably not be a preventative amount of time.
No. So, I mean, whenever he said that, I was like, okay. And then he left the room, and I was like, okay, here are your other options, this and this and this and this. And I was trying to, like, okay, so Badass Mother Birther, beautiful. She's on Instagram and Facebook. That's her tag. I love her. She is...
I'm writing this down.
I think she's, like, the videos that I started with, and I'm still on her stuff. But she has, like, all these gentle C-section options. So I found the videos, and I was, like, trying to show Mom. And as soon as I showed Mom, she's like, oh, I don't want to... Like,
she didn't want to see the C-section,
Yeah, so I was like, oh, shoot. Like, I didn't know, like, that was... Yeah. So, yeah, she didn't want the clear drape at all. She wanted to delay the cord clamping and wanted to narrate. She'd be like, oh, baby's head's born. Oh, it's got a lot of hair. And because I've heard of circumstances where, like, oh, have you seen last night's game? Yeah, that thing. I'm like, that's not what they want to hear when they're in this big moment of their life. But I don't really know if they got any of it, to be fair. But yeah, I made sure to teach them how to advocate for themselves.
Yeah.
But yeah, the nurse that they had, she came in and I was like, I don't really know, but I'll give you a shot. At the very end, like, she just blew it. She became something else, and I had to personally fire her.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was very nervous. I've never had to do that. Because,
ask for a change in nurse.
Yeah, and I was looking for, like, the charge nurse.
Mm-hmm.
So, backstory. She was doing good things at first. She's like, I always get so nervous whenever it's a natural birth because I don't really know what to do. It's not what I usually see. And that's why I like doulas here.
And that sentence should tell their I have feelings. Continue.
Yeah.
And she's like, that's why I like doulas here, because they know the things and they do the things.
That's great.
I was like, yeah, I mean, I'd love to help. And then she just progressively kind of like got snappy and irritated. I don't know how her day was going, but obviously it wasn't going very well. And the mom got an IV in her right arm, and the whole time after she got it placed, she's like, oh my, that doesn't feel good. Like, I don't like bending my arm. Is it supposed to feel like that? And they're like, oh yeah, it's supposed to not feel very comfy. Her arm swelled up because the fluid just stayed in her arm. I was gonna
say, ooh, I don't know about that.
Yeah. So
someone in labor is telling you that their arm hurts.
Out of all the things,
maybe you should look into it.
Yeah. So her arm was just swollen pretty big, and I'm like, that thing is tight. So they couldn't put any more things into it. So they tried over here, which earlier that morning they tried to like draw blood twice. The second time was successful, but the first time just her veins were not having it. And then they tried to put the new IV in like 4 times with the IV needle, which is not fun. And she kept like digging, and and the whole time I was there, which her labor stopped, but she'd have contractions every now and then. But she's like, ow, and like, it hurts. And she's like,
so she was not having a good experience.
No. And she's like, can I just have 5 minutes? And the nurse was kind of like, well, we just need to get it done. Like, let's just get it done now. And I'm like, you've poked her like 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
It's okay. Like, you can give her a second. And then the anesthesiologist came in.
Hope she was great.
She was amazing.
Oh, good.
She was the opposite of the nurse. And she came in, she's like, sweetie, I heard about your story and all this. I hope I don't see you again, but in a good way. I just want everything to go perfect for you. But, if you need anything, this is who I am and all that. Well, she came back in trying to get the IV. And she tried a couple times, and she put the tourniquet on. And she's like, you're not going to go in yet, are you? And she was starting to freak out. She's like, no, I'm just looking. It's okay. And she's like, can we just take a couple minutes? And the nurse was about to say no, and then the lady cut her off, and she's like, take your time. It's okay. It's fine. No rush. Because it wasn't emergent. There was no rush. And then the nurse kept like getting more impatient, and finally, after a couple more times of poking her, the anesthesiologist finally got it. But at that point, she just started crying. She was like, if it hurts this bad, I can't, what if they had to try it over and over for the spinal? Like, I don't know if I can do this. I was like, no, I'm so sorry that they did that. I don't understand how it was so hard. It turns out the tourniquet, every time it would go on, it would, like, burst a blood vessel. So, in order to get it in, she just had to tap her vein, and then it would come up. But, yeah, the nurse kept just, like, escalating things, and at the point where she was crying, she just like needed a second. But the nurse was like, okay, let's get this and this and this done. She's like, I just need 10 minutes, please. And she's like, usually by the time we call a C-section, we're like 30 minutes and we're in the OR. So so
she's driven by fear in that moment. And she's nervous, she's worried, her day's going weird, and she's afraid.
And I'm assuming that maybe they were like, just get her back here, just hurry up and get her back here, because she was dragging her feet. But to be fair, 1, it wasn't emergent, and 2, it was traumatizing last time.
Right.
And the last thing she needs is someone like rushing her.
Yeah.
So she was like trying to tell her like, we just need to hurry up and get it done now. And the mom's like, I just need 5 minutes. And then the husband finally started being like, she just needs 5 minutes. That's all she needs. 5-10 minutes. So then the mom like gets out of bed and just like starting to pace. And then the nurse walks out of the room. Okay, so minor, not minor, but detail I forgot. When she was trying to do the IV, she's like, stop moving, you're closing the vessels. And it made me jump, and I was like, did she just? But it wasn't like she was moving her arm or anything. She was like squeezing this hand.
Mm-hmm.
But when she said stop, and I was like, oh. So whenever she left the room, I was like, are you okay with how that went down?
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, I don't know. I was like, at any point, if you don't like someone, you can get rid of them. You can get someone else to replace them. She's like, you could do that? Honey.
Well, yeah, you don't know.
Yeah, you think they're just stuck with them. And
obviously it's not encouraged, because that makes it difficult for them to manage their schedule. But like,
you have to switch things. But
if it's required, this is about your health.
Yeah, and about your experience at that point. So whenever
they're related.
Yeah, for sure. So whenever the nurse left the room after she was up and pacing, the mom looked at me and she's like, can we get someone else? I'm like, yeah. So yeah, she got a new nurse, and you could tell the new ones came in and they were overly nice and like, I saw you come in this morning, and I'm so sorry this didn't go the way you wanted it to, but you're going to do great. Baby's going to be great. And they were saying that as they were getting her stuff ready. So obviously they were rushing her, but in the right way, instead of being like, no, let's just get it over with. They were doing the nice way. So
yeah, that's really hard.
Yeah. I was very sad when the shift change happened, because I'm like, no, these golden people that I've fell in love with so soon.
And that is the beautiful thing about midwife care and midwifery. And that's why I ended up going to a midwife, because that process, the process of getting a whole new team of people, right? So people are a lot for me. Medical care is a lot to handle when you don't deal with it regularly.
Yeah.
And so when you're in a room full of people that you don't know how their day is going, you don't know how they deal with a rough day, they don't know you, they don't know how you deal in a stressful situation, or what your plan has been, what your plan would like to be. You can take a birth plan, and that's great. In some circumstances, those are taken really seriously, and in some circumstances, they're ignored. And it literally depends on the shift of people that you're working with.
Yeah. And,
if she had been with that other doctor all day long, who knows how the day would have gone. And that's how important birth care is. And that's why it's so important to have someone that you trust on the other end of your bed, or on the other end of your tub, or on the other end of your arms as you're squatting on the ground, right? So yeah, that's really cool. It's great to have the experience of going into the hospital and going into the birth center as someone that's learning to be a birth professional. It sounds like you've got a really great network of people that you're connecting with that work in birth, and on all fronts, hopefully.
Yeah. And it's definitely a different world to go from like a home birth or the birth center birth, where nothing, like, it's 98% of the time hands off. Like, you're doing your thing, you got it. If we need to jump in and help out, we're there. But usually things are fine. To sometimes, well, a lot of times in hospitals, it's very hands-on and being told what to do. So, and it's hard as a student midwife who's used to seeing everything go smoothly, to going into a hospital to try to figure out, okay, is this medically necessary, or is this just your protocols?
Yeah.
And I was told yesterday that evidence-based, like, research doesn't go into evidence-based care until 12 years later.
12 years? Oh my goodness, why such a long delay?
It's just hard to break old habits.
Wow.
And by the time those new evidence-based things are finally there, we have 12 more years of research to say, wait, no, we have more.
Right.
So it's just constantly like
playing catch up.
Yeah.
Wow. That's really interesting.
Yeah. So it's different, but it's a good learning perspective.
Definitely.
To try to figure out, okay, well, and as a doula, you can't give medical advice. So
No.
you
Yeah.
have to be like, okay, well, these are your options, and it has to be unbiased.
It's so fascinating. I love your perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's different too, because everybody that I work with has a kid. So that's where they started their journey. They're like, oh, well, my birth didn't go at all how I wanted it to, so that's why I became a midwife. And I'm like, I'm a child. I haven't had a kid yet. But I want to make sure nobody has to experience that for the first one or for their 8th one. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's really cool. That's perfect. I think that's where we're going to end.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Yeah, sorry for all the segues, but...
I love the segues. Thanks for sitting on the floor with me.
Yeah.
Our show
Good
is just
experience.
a lot of segues. So that's
Yeah. I mean, you've listened to 1 or 2 episodes. There's a lot of sidetracks.
But it's always good. It's always
That's so great. Thank you.
gold.
Thanks for saying
Wow,
so.
thanks. So was this. So thank you.
Yeah,
it was
no
awesome.
problem.
All right. Well, I guess we will talk to you later. Let's go hang out with the bebe.
I'm so excited.
And we'll
I'm
talk
jealous.
to you. I know. We'll talk to you next week.